How is that? Is that okay? Oh, I am catching up on some commissions. So I thought that I would just put this on and talk to you guys. You can hear my studio dogs snuffling around in the back. And it's kind of funny because there's sort of this joke that you're not a real artist, you haven't made it unless you have a studio dog. And when you're posting on social media, your posts, they just don't do as well unless you have a dog. So I would always say, oh, can't call myself a real artist until I get a dog. And I was joking, but deep down in my heart, I was serious. Because I thought, oh, I want a little buddy. So that it's just nice, you know? Have a little pup around, follow you around, look at you funny, not laugh at your jokes. It's basically like a friend. Right now, I'm still in the very beginning stages. I have the first layer down, which is just basically a sketch. Right now, I am leveling the ears. I will tell you. I'm leveling ears and the eyes to make sure that the proportions are right. I have someone who is very kind and lets me send them. If you're an artist, get artist friends. Okay, you need the support. But I send them photos and they can look at it and then in a second tell me, oh, this is messed up or this is, the colors are off or something. So after I finish a stage, I'll send it to them. And they help me decide where to go next because when you've been staring at it for 6 hours, it starts to look normal, which is interesting because it makes me wonder, what do I look like? I'm so used to myself, but I know that isn't me. I used to use solvent, which is bad. I used, what was it, mineral... a solvent, and it was odorless, which is great, but the odors still get to you. You just cannot smell them, the fumes. And it would give me terrible headaches, and I could only paint for a few hours at a time, and then I had to stop. So then I switched to oil. I think it's grapeseed oil. I switched to an oil, and it took a little getting used to, but that has made all the difference. I have to keep standing back because when you're close to it, it's a different perspective. When you stand back, you can see what's wrong with it. Okay, I'm just going to keep going ahead. I've got some titanium white. People get very passionate about what color white you use. I swear that was my dog. Had a big burp. She's still pretty young, so she gets frustrated when I don't play with her constantly. No. Okay. But I use titanium white because I can get it in a quick dry. Because oil painting takes so long to dry. So I can get it in a quick dry and it really speeds up the process. I'm working on Christmas commissions, which is always tough because they are surprises for people. So you can't post them on social media And I have some really incredible collectors who follow, and they're always kind of full of questions. And they'll say, "Oh, what are you working on? I haven't seen you posting. Have you stopped?" People ask me all the time if I've stopped painting. It's really interesting. I get that question all the time. And I always say, no, I just can't post because I'm doing surprises. You don't want to ruin the surprise. Because some people will follow me and look at my stuff, and then a relative or someone will say they've been looking at it and they'll want to get them a commission, which I think is really sweet. I have any place I go, I immediately put down a canvas on the floor. It's a tarp on one side, canvas on the other, so that I don't get paint on the carpet, but also it feels so good on my feet. It just makes me feel authentic. Like I'm sort of like a wild-spirited, even my floor is canvas and I paint. Got some quinacridone rose. Some of these paint names, I'll tell you. I could do a whole video on just paint names, and I probably will. I did a video on tongue twisters, which I'm going to put up on Patreon. Paint-treon, I guess, for today. That's a palette knife. Okay. Good girl, yes. Good girl. You have to tell her when she's being good because she's so mischievous. You want to catch them when they're doing good. Which is kind of a lesson for life. You can catch people when they're doing something good. It's really fun. Because it's not just like a compliment, like, oh, I like your shoes. But you tell them, hey, I noticed how you handled that conversation, and I thought you did it really gracefully. Compliments like that, I really like. I don't know, they're thoughtful. Makes me feel like people are really hearing what I'm saying and paying attention. The color I'm using right now, it's a really peachy pink. It's quinacridone rose, and then some yellow ochre. Wow, I can't believe I forgot what that's called. Yellow ochre, and it makes just a kind of pale peachy pink, and I love it. Oh, and I'm wearing, my shirt is the exact same color. Ha ha ha. Okay. I want to tell you guys, well, here, I'm going to start with a story. So I used to live in a big house that was built to be big and to host essentially events. There were always people there. And I like people, but I like having my space. So I was always kind of bitter about the amount of people that were there. And I had a studio upstairs, so I would go up there and work, and people would just wander in. I don't understand, people come over to someone's house and they just wander around and look into rooms. It's the worst, but this guy wandered into my studio where I was working, and I had some stuff on the walls. And he just launched into this speech. And you know how people they'll project and they'll tell you things about yourself that clearly is bothering them, and they don't know you, so everything they're saying, you're just thinking, well, you're clearly talking about yourself, right? And he just started telling me how I needed to give up painting and stop painting and get a business degree and all this stuff. It was so bizarre. This stranger just started, talking, and I'm just sitting there listening, kind of in awe. And he was telling me that he wanted to be a painter, but then he had to get his head out of the clouds, and he went and got his business degree, and basically just telling me the story of how he totally threw his dreams away and how I needed to do that. It was so bizarre. And then he left. And I will tell you, I started locking my studio door because just the amount of people who'd wander in and I'd tell them to GTFO. But every time that I would get discouraged, and still now, where things are difficult or I'm just frustrated painting, I just think of him and how upset he was and how bitter he was and miserable he was. And then I think, you know what? I can do this because ending up like that is my worst nightmare. Stopping doing something you love and then blaming other people for it just sounds awful. More visitors. Oh, people still come into my studio. Well, that wasn't a person. Creatures in my studio. And, definitions of success are different for sure. So if you have a specific goal in mind, I know for a lot of people it's a certain amount of money, then yeah, do not pursue painting for sure. I'm not because it's not lucrative, but because that is not going to keep you going when you have a show and nobody comes, or when you do a commission and they hate it, or you just can't make it work. Like, money is not going to keep you going. You have to love it. There was a girl in one of my classes, and she was talking, and she was making fun of this person. She's talking about not a specific person, but a type of person. She said, "I'm not the type of artist who, if they don't make art, they'll just die." Everybody laughed because they're like, "Oh, I know, right? Those crazy people." And I said, "Whoa, that is 100% me. I have to paint. If I don't paint, I feel like I would metaphorically die. It would just be like there'd be no life there." And I am grateful that I can sell them, but if they didn't sell, I would still paint. I'd probably run out of space, but I paint no matter what. And then when people connect with them and want to buy them, that's a bonus, but it isn't a condition nor a motivation to do it. And I know it can be really hard figuring out what you want to do and what you love. Some things will just kind of fall into your lap. Like this audio, I didn't even know it existed last year. I had no idea. I was looking for a guided meditation, and I came across an ASMR video. And now I'm doing this, and I love it. Okay, I got some shadows in. I go in with the darkest shadows and then build up to lighter. So I'm going to go back and get another view of it from way back here. Yes, it's coming together. This is the best feeling when you look at it and it's happening. Oh, I feel so good. It's like a little rush of dopamine. Okay, because sometimes you do it and it doesn't happen. It's bad. And then the person commissioning it says, "Hey, can I get an update?" And you say, and you have to, it's so hard showing people who aren't creative, and I don't mean that as a dig at all, but it's like people have different gifts, and if you don't have the gift of like visual creativity, I feel like it's impossible to look at something that isn't finished and imagine what it will look like finished. So it's very difficult to show something in the halfway awkward stage and try to explain to them, it will look better. You have to go through this stage. It's important. Which, hey, is another life lesson. You have to get through that awkward stage. Because if you don't, if you just did the top layer, you would have a very thin, sketchy, shallow picture of what you're trying to portray, as opposed to a rich, layered picture with history, which is what makes it interesting and gives it feeling and life. I'm on the nose right now, and the canvas has the texture of the nose. The dog in the background. What are you? Oh my God. Anyway. One of my favorite colors is manganese blue. So beautiful. It's alive. People use it in a lot of portraits because it's just intense and you can use it for details that are a little dramatic. Someone has the zoomies. Okay. Doing a pattern right now. You right there, Munchkin? What you doing? Come here. Come here. Okay. I'm gonna put in the background. I put in the background pretty early on because it's really hard to tell what colors you're using. So I use a colored ground, which is, the ground is essentially the first layer, it's the background, what you're building off of. And just a blank canvas has a white ground. I like using a colored ground so that the colors pop through, and the subject I'm doing is mostly blue, so I have the background as a warm color. So you get that contrast. So this kind of reddish brown, it's like a burnt sienna, is shining through, and it creates kind of energy between the colors because they're opposite on the color wheel. And I'm trying to remember for the background what I was gonna do for it helps a lot when I get an Instagram along with the photos I'm working on, because I can go through their Instagram and see their preferred color palette, and that helps me a lot when choosing a background color. Because if it's a surprise, you can't ask them, and you want it to go with their house. So if you can see photos of their house or kind of their clothes or what colors they enjoy, then it's easier to pick a background color. So the subject is blue, opposite of blue, orange. But they like pastels, but they like colorful pastels. And there's a lot of orange in these. And the filters they use, you can tell what they like. So we're just going to do a straight up creamsicle orange. So I've got a lot of whites. Got some azo coral. Some scarlet pyrrole, which is the orangest orange. You can barely look directly at it. And pyrrole, I'm not sure. I know pyre has something to do with fire, right? You have the funeral pyre, you have pyromaniac, scarlet pyrrole, and it's very intense, very fire-like. So that makes sense. Some of these are named for what's in them, like cadmium. Red has cadmium in it. And then you have, phthalocyanine. I actually don't know what that's named for, but I barely use it because it kind of takes over the whole palette. That's like a turquoisey green. Okay, so we got our white, we got our azo. That is going to be nice. I use pretty intense colors, and my professors hated my work, and they were incredible artists, incredible teachers, but they did not like my work, and I feel like, so here, you get to hear my take on art school. So buckle up. I think it's important to go in to school knowing what you want and making kind of a game plan to get that, because the teachers I learned the most for actually weren't in my classes. And of course, it's very generous of their time to talk to me and work with me. But we're all kind of there in the same building, and I feel like art people tend to wander around anyway, talking to each other and looking at each other's work and randomly collabing and things like that. So it's not like a huge imposition because we're out and about anyway, and it's something I miss a lot. Those are the people I love wandering into my studio. Even though in school they still have a lot of things to say about my art that wasn't exactly encouraging. But if you go in knowing what you want, you can go find people you want to learn from and ask them questions. And that's what I did, is I would ask them about my work, how to improve it, or, where I was going wrong, or just tips. And so they were wonderful, because even though they didn't like it, I still got a lot of great feedback and helped me. I think in a way it was really wonderful, because when no one likes your work, you have to be sure of it, and you have to be your own cheerleader. And in my classes, it was an insult to somebody to tell them their work was pretty. So they would tell me, it's pretty, it's decorative. And one of them said, I set up, it wasn't for my thesis, but I set up one of my projects, and they said, it looks like you just painted a bunch of stuff to sell. Which is true. I mean, I do love my work, but I really want to make things that people would enjoy having in their homes. My whole thing about painting is, when I see a painting, it's sort of like a spiritual experience. You connect to it or you don't. When I connect with a painting, I can just stare at it, and I can feel a change, like in my lungs. It's like when you're actively trying to relax and you take your tongue off the roof of your mouth and you set your shoulders down. You can just kind of feel this shift in your mood and your spirit. And that's what happens when I see a painting I love. And I don't have a lot of original art. I have some teeny tiny ones that I got from artists I love, some before they got big enough in the art world so I could actually afford them. But when I look at these pieces, it changes my mood. And it's like a little bolt of energy I get. And the idea that something I make could provide that for someone else just keeps me alive. Like it's almost like a secret language, because I'm painting and I'm kind of saying things I can't put into words visually. And then someone comes along and they see it and they just connect to it, and they don't necessarily know why, but they just do. And it's like your spirits kind of communicate, I guess. That's how I see it. I don't know if that makes sense. But so when somebody buys something, because it always looks different in person, it's incredibly hard to capture colors and texture on photographs, so they'll buy it and then they'll get it in person and then they'll just say kind of what they felt when they saw it. And I think that's so beautiful because that transposes like language and even time. You have these old paintings that you can still feel, they're still alive, even though the artists are long gone. And the world is full of a lot of difficult things, so for me to be able to make something pretty and decorative, to me, I think is really wonderful. I enjoy that. So despite all of the comments that were meant negatively, it really helped me realize why I'm doing this and what I want to do. And now, a wonderful thing about art school is if you have sensitive feelings, they'll go away. You just get used to people not liking it and telling you that. And I don't think you should be mean to people, but if people are mean to you for a long time, you get used to it. And then it doesn't bother you. I've had, at shows, you won't believe, people will just wander into your booth. Say they hate a painting and then leave, and it's sort of like, okay. Or they'll say, I could paint that, and you say, feel free, go ahead. Like, I would love them to. Go for it. So if you want to go to art school, do it. Make sure you know what you want. Seek out people you want to learn from. And, a lot of them are so gracious and generous. They'll totally talk to you and help you. And I think some people are in school and they don't want to be. So if they find someone who genuinely is putting the work in and wants to be there, it's very delightful for them. Okay. I'm going to step back now. This is a little off, but you don't want to overwork it because you stare at it for long enough, it starts to look weird. So I feel like you just put down a solid layer and then you come back the next day with rested eyes or after a friend has seen it and make changes. For now, I'm just going to leave that. I have 3 in the queue from the same person, which is cool because they're getting them for all their friends for Christmas. So I'm trying to get these all done together. Okay. Oh, shoot. Get my glove off. There has been a absolute shortage of gloves because of, the global pandemic. Get a photo of this. I always photograph the different stages because I think it's really easy to forget the ugly stage, and I love looking back and seeing progress. It's just really encouraging to myself. And then it also helps when I'm trying to show somebody when they're like, ooh, I don't like that color. And I tell them it's the first layer. And then I can show them other portraits and how they went through the same step. And then it's easier for them to say, oh, okay.